Hello, welcome back to episode 6 of the K20 DC2 Racecar build. For once, Perth is not blindingly sunny and hot. It's actually quite nice, having a bit of rain, cools things down. So it's been a little while since the last video. I'll just catch you up on what I've been doing, just chipping away at a few smaller jobs over the weekends when I've had spare time. This will be quite a short one, and then today's task is get the engine in the bay. So we'll start off with the rear suspension. When I set these up, I managed to get about 25 millimeters of droop from the rear, and that's because underneath you can see we've got the honed roll center correction kit that spaces down the lower control arm, and which also spaces down the shock mount and reduces the amount of droop you can get out of the coilover. So Shockworks, they're complete legends. They rebuilt the rear dampers into longer shock bodies, so the threaded part of the shock body is longer. That allows you to wind the bottom mount off further and extend the amount of droop that it has. So because, 25 mil of droop, that'd be fine for a dedicated circuit car. For me, because it's going to be a mix between tarmac rally sprints and circuit, I wanted a little bit more, and we've been able to achieve that, so it's a really good result. And rear suspension and front suspension is now all completely dialed and good to go. Also sorted out the braking system. So starting with the master, we have a honed brake booster delete kit, so completely manual brakes. You re-drill the pedal to increase the ratio and fit a smaller master cylinder. This is an EK 7/8 inch master cylinder. Here in Australia, it's difficult to get reasonably priced new or remanufactured masters, so typically I just buy stuff from Rock Auto in the States. It's super cheap, but it means it's set up for a left-hand drive car. You can see the circuit comes out on the wrong side. Doesn't worry me because I was going to redo all the hard lines anyway. Just means you've got to run a few extra lines if you're cutting it into a stock system. The reason I've rerouted all these lines is because in the stock car, you have two circuits on the master cylinder. They're split diagonally, so on one circuit you have the left rear wheel and the right front wheel, and on the other circuit vice versa. And that's so that if one circuit is compromised, then you've still got one wheel on each end of the car that's acting to slow you down. In a motorsport application, that's not ideal. I want them split into front and rear circuits, which is what I've now done. So front circuit comes off, shoots into a uni, and then got new lines out to the front wheels. And the rear circuit, that shoots off into a bias adjuster valve. So I've got a Willwood bias adjuster valve, which I can dial in the exact brake balance that I need out of it. And that joins into the stock hard lines, which then head back under the car alongside the fuel lines. So I've got some nice unions there. These are from GK Tech, these 4-way stainless steel unions. That's super handy because it allows me to mount the brake pressure sensors. I have two Bosch, I think they're 3000 PSI brake pressure sensors. They'll be very valuable, mainly for the front circuit, is understanding exactly how much pressure I'm applying and how I'm applying it. That's quite a good area for development, is understanding your braking technique and how you get on the brakes, what happens when you heel toe, that sort of thing. And then for the rear circuit, that allows us to exactly see what the balance is. So looking forward to getting that data. Pretty happy with how that turned out. The hard lines are all pretty nice and neat and shiny, so I'm always happy with that. I ended up with a Honda S2000 clutch master cylinder, which is this here. In the stock setup, they have a separate reservoir, so like a EG Civic or a DC Integra, the reservoir actually sits up here and has a line which runs to the master. So having the S2000 master just cleans things up a little bit. It has a very simple little billet spacer behind it to get it sticking out far enough. But yeah, it's a much neater solution. My front brakes finally showed up, so I ordered these in October 2022, and it's now May 2023. So really glad to get them. So I've got an Alcon 4-pot kit, 330mm by 28mm rotors. So they need 17-inch wheels to clear, and it's a pretty nice kit. So they're 2-piece rotors. So you have the steel rotor ring and then an aluminium rotor hat. These are fully floating, so they're not bolted directly together. aluminium and steel have different rates of expansion as they get hotter, so quite significantly different rates of expansion. So if they were bolted directly together, there'll be a lot of stress generated in that because the aluminium expands much faster than the steel does. So we have these sort of like bobbin sliders. So they're sort of bolted through into the brake rotor, and they allow everything to expand at their different rates. And yeah, happy days. So that's what happens on the full race cars as well. The kit was fairly expensive, but it was I guess the cheapest of the big name kits, and it didn't fit amazingly. The dog bones put the caliper in a slightly weird position. It was a little bit off center, so I just had to adjust that. And also the calipers that were supplied were trailing calipers, not leading. So a trailing caliper mounts at the back, whereas a leading mounts at the front. And the reason that's important is because the piston sizes are actually different between the leading and the trailing piston inside the caliper. The reasoning for that is, as the rotor rotates, if you apply the brakes, it sort of pinches the pad at that point when the pad grips down on the disc, and you end up with tapered pad wear. So if you had the same piston in both ends, the upper part of the pad would wear a fair bit faster than the lower part of the pad. So what you end up with in practice is you have a larger piston down the bottom, so you're applying more force to the bottom of the pad, and that evens out that wear, and you get a nice even sort of application of the brake pad to the rotor. Pretty easy to fix. All I had to do was swap the bleed nipples. So these were originally on the bottom where the bridge currently is, so I just removed the bridge, put that down the bottom, relocated the bleed nipples to the top, and now it's set up so that the smaller piston is at the top and the larger piston is at the bottom. For pads, that's WinMax W6.5 pads for the front. They're a tarmac rally pad. They turn on real quick, so like 1 or 2 corners you're up to speed, which is great for the rally sprints that I do. But they're still good out to 800 degrees Celsius at the top end, so they're really good for long circuit sessions, and quite a lot of circuit racers use them for their races. I've had really good results for these in the past, so I'll keep running them. They're the best pad I've used to date. In the rear, I've got a couple of steps down. It's a WinMax W3. That's because most of the weight in these cars is up front, and you can see the relative sizes of the brake packages back that up. Huge, tiny. So yeah, so that along with the wheelwood adjustable bias valve means you can get the rear balance dialed in exactly where it needs to be, and not locking up the rears and getting all out of shape. Also gutted the doors. So these doors, when fully dressed and stock, weigh about 30 kilograms. I've pulled these down to 14 kilograms, so that's 16 kgs per door removed. That's significant. Pretty happy to be able to do that. So obviously cut out the inner skin, cut out the side intrusion bar, which I don't need anymore because I have a full roll cage, and the windows are gone too. I still need to add in Lexan windows, which will be quite light, and also some sort of door card, which will probably just be like a thin sheet of carbon fibre or aluminium. That won't add too much weight back in, so yeah, pretty happy with that. And finally, in the interior, I've got a new seat. So this is a Racetech 4100 HR tall model. I previously had the Racetech just standard size, but I found the head restraints which are a little bit too low for me, so I'm 6'1". That was always the plan, is buy the standard seat, see if I did fit in it. In this case I didn't, so what I'll then do is take the standard seat and install that on the co-driver side. So all the rally sprint events I have a co-driver, so I needed 2 seats regardless, and that's why I started with buying the standard. This tall has a wider sort of frame to it. The seat itself is the same size, they're just sort of more padding on the inside. So I had to design and make some custom seat side mounts, which then bolt to the existing sort of mounts that are welded into the chassis when the cage was done. That's all sorted, seat's in a perfect position for me now, really happy with the ergonomics. Also missing an accelerator pedal, so what I'll be installing is a Bosch Motorsport drive-by-wire throttle pedal, because this will have an electronic throttle body. So this needs to be mounted up in here somewhere. The firewall at the back's not very flat, so I'll need to make some sort of bracket to have that fit in. I'll do that at a later date. Hopefully it's simple, but we'll see how we go. There's a lot of complex shapes in there, but it does look to fit quite nicely alongside where the original pedal mounted, because there's quite the kick over in this pedal. So yeah, I'll leave that for a later date. Lastly, I've got the engine back from the mechanic. So Focky at P&D Professional Mechanical is a complete gun. He does heaps of Hondas and has the fastest, I guess, 2-litre Honda in the state at the moment. So he's just done a bunch of refresh work to this and a few simple modifications. As a reminder, it's a K20 Z1 out of a DC2 Integra Type S. That's kind of the highest power of all the K series engines, apart from the Japan only Type R models. So what I've done to that is installed Toda Spec C camshafts, full titanium retainers, got some valve springs in there as well. Toda adjustable exhaust cam gear and a 40-degree VTC intake cam gear. Got ATI super damper. Those are super handy. Friends have had really good results of those. These motors love to vibrate, especially with the near solid engine mounts that we run in the cars. So these super dampers help pull a lot of that out and prolong the life of the engine as well as everything else in the car that doesn't like being vibrated. Got new tensioners, new water pump, new gaskets, new seals. Just basically went through the engine and did a major service to it. Installed the Unit 2 Elite sump. It's a massive sump, it takes like 9 litres. It's very well baffled, pretty much as good as you can get before going to a dry sump. And I've got the gearbox on the engine now too. So Focky had previously built the gearbox probably 6 or 8 months ago. It's got a close ratio gear set in it, which I'm really looking forward to using. So it does about like 90 kilometers an hour in first gear, which is a really tall first gear. And then it uses a combination of, so first and second gear are an aftermarket one, I think they're Gear X. And third through sixth are a combination, like a pick and mix of OEM Honda ratios. Ends up using like a Honda Accord fifth gear as the sixth gear in this. So it's quite a tight set. Really good for keeping the engine in the power band, which is what I'm looking forward to. Had a XCD heavy duty clutch and light and flywheel installed on it as well. The stock clutch just needed to be replaced, so it makes sense to go for a slightly updated unit. I won't actually need the extra power holding. This is probably still going to make, let's say, 220, 230 horsepower at the wheels, so nothing major. So this is all ready to go. What I'll probably do, spend the rest of the day doing, is get this back in the engine bay, get all the mounts sorted out for that, get everything installed in there, and then start installing the other little bits and pieces. So in one of the previous videos I sort of mocked up fuel surge tank, catch can, a few other bits and pieces like that, so we'll see what I've got time to do today. But anyway, let's get into getting the engine installed. Okay, so I've just installed the engine mounts ready to go. Bolt this one back into the chassis, got this floppy here so they can sit down on the engine. With the rear one, I had a lot of trouble when I was test installing the engine, slipping this sort of fork over that mount. So if this left this one fully attached, that's probably going to be a pain in the ass as we bring the engine up and in, but I can try and get it out of the way if I need to. Left these a little bit loose, so I've got a little bit of room to move. And same on this side, this is the one that goes to the gearbox. So last time I had a heap of trouble getting to these nuts to do them up, and I had this bracket attached to the transmission. So I've left them attached to each other now, and I'll flip this down to sit on the transmission once it's up in position. When I test fit the engine, I had it on its lowest setting, but that was probably a little bit too low. So you can sort of see in here you've got 2 different bolt holes. That's originally designed for K20 versus K24, but I wanted to see if I could get the K20 super nice and low and close to the ground. But yeah, the sump was going to be pretty low, so I'm trying the upper mounts now. Might end up fouling a few little bits on the bonnet, but we'll see how we go. Anyway, time to lift the front of the car up with the engine crane, slide the engine under, and then I use the crane to lift the engine up into place. We'll get onto that now.
You say you wanna cry, but you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose. Let's have a bit of fun till I downfall. My love, if you feel like I do right now, don't say you're on the run to the other side. My love, you say you wanna try, but you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose. You say you wanna try, but you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose. You say you wanna cry.
Alright, well that went pretty smoothly until it didn't. Had a bit of a struggle, so the rear mount back there, I forgot to flip that to the higher setting to make sure that the engine's sort of higher up, like I was saying before. So when it came to trying to align those bolts that go to the gearbox down there, they just didn't want to play ball. So I figured that out after about 15 minutes of struggling, and as soon as that happened, it all went in sweet as. Yeah, the rest of it was pretty smooth. Everything fits quite nicely. Just had to do a few little rigging changes to get the centre of balance correct. Keep wanting to sort of slip away to one side. But yeah, as far as engine installs go with one person, that was pretty good, about an hour. So that's all in, everything's all tight, all sitting pretty nicely. At the higher level, it does clear the bonnet quite well. What I haven't tested is the power steering pump, which sits on here. That sits up quite high, that's likely to fail. That's not a big issue. I may still decide to run electric power steering, I haven't decided yet. If that's the case, then I'll have a power steering pump probably somewhere down in that corner, which obviously no issues. So that's it for engine install. What I'll do now is just chuck in a few of those extra bits into the engine bay to dress it out a little bit, and we'll close it out after that. Alright, so I just spent the last hour or so taking on some little bits and pieces. So a few extras been added to the bay. So we have the fuel surge tank with the fuel pump installed up in the back. Fuel filter mounted there on the strut tower. Ethanol content sensor down on the frame rail. And the catch can also there on the frame rail. I've got the clutch slave cylinder on and the clutch line installed. It's quite a long soft line, so I sort of routed that right through the back, get it clean and out of the way. And also got this track tough swirl pot, so very stoked to try this. I think a lot of people had great results for them. K-series engines are quite hard to bleed coolant for, so what this does is essentially it just self-bleeds the whole time. It acts as a high point, but also the swirling motion of the coolant running into that naturally removes a lot of the bubbles and they'll just collect up the top. So hopefully it'll help this thing stay pretty cool. Also chucked on a K-tuned sort of rotatable thermostat housing, so once the radiator's installed we can get that pointed straight at the radiator sort of intake tube. And last but not least, got the Home Developments master cylinder brace installed. Thankfully just clears the K-series valve cover. Earlier when I was bleeding the brakes, the fireball flex is sort of like 4 or 5 millimeters. When you're at full pedal, it's actually quite considerable. So that's made a massive difference. I now can no longer bottom out the pedal. It's rock hard, which is pretty good. I think that's about it. So I'll probably pack up for the night now and get this back on the ground. And then, next time, not sure what I'll get into. Either just keep chipping away at these small little jobs of getting everything set up in the engine bay, or maybe crack into some wiring. We'll see how we go. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you later.